Hello and welcome to the DvN tier list. This is going to start with enemies first. I'll probably do some more in the future with like classes, weapons, upgrades, stuff like that. And I thought about it would be cool to also do some with other people, like as a group. I might redo this one in the future like that, but as of right now, this is just going to be my personal tier list. So currently, there's 3 tier lists to make. There is the difficulty of enemies, which is the first one we'll deal with. The next one is how well designed it was. And finally, just personally, which one I like more. So there will be some hot takes. Yep. And there definitely is a masochist slash hell mode bias. This is also coming from a recon main who secondary specialist and assault. But yeah, moving forward. All right, our first unit, the infantry. This guy on most difficulties is known as the base fodder unit. He's a staple of the game, but I'm not gonna lie, dude. I'm gonna put him in a solid B tier. This guy he's really easy to deal with, but they have one job, which is pretty much just to shoot at you. They throw grenades occasionally, which are more so of a nuisance than an actual threat, but these guys in their one job do a pretty good job at what they do. And on higher difficulties that I play on, these guys hurt really badly. I've died to these guys quite a bit when trying to, well, if you're getting ballsy and want to cross big open gaps, don't underestimate these guys. These guys can mess you up. But I mean, they're pretty basic. They're very good fodder units, so they're very good at what they do, and they're pretty accurate on masochist and hell. Alright, you newbies are gonna not like me for this one, but this guy. I'm sorry. I know a lot of new players hate this guy. Let's start with the fact that has the most nightmare fuelish sounds that you're probably gonna hear. He's a one-shot kill, moves very fast, and can mangle players. And bypasses things like overcharge and force fields. But the thing about this guy is he constantly pings himself. So you always know where he is, and he's extremely loud, making him an obvious target. He's melee only, which is funny because one of his biggest counters is also melee. So really, if you just don't peek this guy or let him get up in your business too much, he's pretty easy to take out from afar, and even up close can be really not that bad. I mean, he has a punishing death, but that's really about it. Most of the time, if you're playing Siege correctly, he's not that big of an issue. In fact, I'd say the worst time that you're going to have with this guy is like wave 1 when you're trying to get in position. Or if you're doing wave 1 of epilogue, these guys can be pretty annoying. But they also get stuck a lot, and they have very terrible pathfinding. If you're on Coastal, on the other hand, there's a good chance on Coastal you're probably going to be playing Scout or Assault, doing a lot of melee gameplay. And these guys can be annoying because Coastal has a lot of objects in the way, making them very sporadic and unpredictable, but they can still be dealt with pretty easily, and if you're not going to take a chance, just shoot them. The Shielder. This one's a tough one, actually. He's between 2 spots for me. I'm going to put him on maybe a spot above the Cloaker on weak. It's kind of the same deal with the Cloaker, but he's a lot more subtle. The Shielder actually has a little bit of range, and that 10 extra HP makes it to where meleeing him is not as much of an option. Not to mention his reaction speed on Masochist and up. So he's pretty much just a one-shot kill, and melee is it's still doable. You can melee him, but it's a lot worse of an idea to melee him than a Cloaker. These guys are very quiet on higher difficulties. And they also possess a shield, which just makes killing them and the enemies behind them a lot more difficult. But I mean, they're still pretty easy to take out. I consider shielders stealth, like light stealth units, because they humble players with low self-awareness. But overall, they're not that bad. Alright, this one's going to be the first one to really throw people off. And I have very good explanations for these guys. Let me tell you. These guys should not be common infantry units, spawning on wave 2. And let me explain some things about saboteurs that you probably may or may not know about. These guys are brutal. So on lower difficulties, they're not too bad, other than I know a lot of new engineers they're pretty annoying. But on higher difficulties, I have horror stories about these guys, and a lot of my hell team can also agree with this. So these guys do 3 damage per shot on their Kibo, which scales with difficulty. And by the way, their fire rate is very high. First of all, they cloak, making them completely invisible to players and units. I guess not completely invisible to players, but machinery won't detect them, and they're very hard to see, which is why low performance mode is really nice, because it tends to make them a little bit more visible. These guys, if you don't see them, as soon as they uncloak, they can wipe you out so fast. And dude, these are really, like, if I didn't have to deal with these guys in my solo master runs, I would have beaten solo masochists so many times. And let me tell you, I'm a recon main. These guys are the worst enemy to a recon. You might think it's the engineer. No, it's the recon, because the engineer's got a shotgun, an RPG, which can be upgraded to rocket stormer. And really, if you're an engineer, you just need to put your turret in a place that's not going to get sapped, which is why proxy is amazing. So these guys do a lot of damage. Not to mention that they constantly strafe. They've placed landmines, which honestly isn't too bad for me, because I use Torque Blade, which allows me to get chain kills a lot easier. So that's actually the silver lining. Not to mention it allows you to tell if there's a saboteur nearby. But if you're playing Scout or Assault with Arrow Rig, there's a good chance you've probably tripped on some landmines here and there. And they deal 150 damage at base, which scales with difficulty, by the way. Doing up to, like 450 damage in Hell and 300 on Masochist. Yeah. These guys deploy drones with, like, very little cooldown, and they will destroy your equipment so fast. If you thought that was bad, let's move on to another factor. These guys are also completely immune to whistling, which, I know a lot of you new players don't know, but there's a mechanic in the game where if you hold G, it allows you to taunt for a brief period of time, which causes almost all enemies, to completely ignore other targets and go after you, which is really good if you know how to use it. Doesn't work on bosses, and it doesn't work on these guys. Not to mention saboteurs are immune to crowd control effects from specialists, like knockout and airburst if they're cloaked. These guys in general are just terrible. And let me tell you, oh my god, I can't tell you so many times that they would go across the map just to destroy a teleporter away from me, completely trapping me. And if you want to know about horror stories, these guys are known for team wiping us on Wave Ultima. It's more so the fact that they're just so common and they have those capabilities. Like, yeah, if you have to deal with one here and there, they're really not that bad, but they're extremely common. And if you don't have any self-awareness, these guys will counter you in any way possible. These guys, I'm going to put these guys at strong below infantry. They're not super influential, but they are pretty annoying. They come with 210 HP, and I don't know why, because they're less armored than an infantry unit, and they strafe a lot. But their main thing is that they shoot gas clouds, or gas grenades, which have these gas clouds which almost completely obscure your vision and slow you down. They're very annoying, but they don't kill you, so they don't have any damaging potential, and they aren't super dense. So these guys, despite the fact that they can be a huge nuisance, are not too bad. Let me introduce a term to you called Jetpacker Syndrome. If you're newer, if you're somebody who's played the game a lot, you've probably heard of this. Jetpacker Syndrome is the ability to see through walls, because jetpackers are known to target players through walls because of what I had to guess is probably a lack of a delay in reaction time. Because enemies, occasionally I think their raycasting vision can see through walls. I don't know if that's the case or not, but these guys have it a bit, which can make them pretty annoying. And they can spam smoke your area quite a bit. So usually when they smoke up the area, it's just best to just kind of leave and let the area clear out a bit. The fact that they strafe and have a lot of health is also really annoying. I like to grapple these guys as an assault and melee them to death, but it takes 3 melee swings, which is just annoying. So they can cause death if you get too cocky, and then next thing you know, because you can't see the enemies, are rushing you, all that. All in all, they're not too bad, but they're definitely strong enough. All right. This one, I think we can all agree on pretty well. and I'm actually gonna put them maybe. I'm gonna put them below saboteurs. So, jetpackers. The term jetpacker syndrome comes into play. These are one of the most hated units in the game, and for a very good reason. Now, as somebody who spent a lot of time on Archipelago, they're usually not too bad, but that's one map. Now, I also spend a lot of time on City, and if you play Garden and most maps, these guys are horrible. The ability to just charge up out of nowhere, launch themselves into the air, and hold their shot just until they have line of sight, one-shotting you, giving you really no way of avoiding them unless you have a jetpack. These guys are terrible, not to mention that they strafe while they're reloading, so even if you land, even if they land near you, and you can take them out real quick, if you don't have a melee and you're trying to, quick react with, a machete throw or some bullets, there's a good chance that you might, in panic, miss most of your shots as they're strafing, and then they'll just charge up again, and usually if they do that point blank, it's just death. Now, these guys do up to 45 damage on 100% difficulty, so they can hurt pretty bad, but they're not too bad. But these guys on higher difficulties, it's just a death sentence. So, yeah, I also think it's funny that there's two special wave modes called Cloaker Rush and Jetpacker Joyride. Or Jetpack Joyride, sorry. They both reward the same thing when Cloaker Rush is objectively way easier than Jetpack Joyride. I mean, then you got Mutilated Deaths, which is really not that bad unless you're on wave 7 or wave 8. And it gives 4 times reserve instead of 2 times. I will say, though, jetpackers can be exploited on certain maps. And if you have Overcharger, these guys are nothing. But jetpackers, all in all, are nightmarish. Not to mention that even though their charge up on you implies that they're locked onto you, if they can't target you, sometimes they'll switch targets mid-flight and they'll shoot rockets at players across the map, killing them without any warning. So all in all, these guys are terrible. Not to mention that Bulwark adding the drive-by mechanic. Bulwark, I just want to say, you're a fucking psychopath. But yeah, these guys are terrible. I'm glad that they're not common like saboteurs. If that was the case, then they would be above sabs, without hesitation. Moving on, we got Gunners. Gunners. Oh yes, gotta love Gunners. Where are you? These guys aren't too common. I'm going to put these guys at strong and above infantry. Scout players hate these guys. Rightfully so. Gunners are units that charge up and rapidly fire. They will not stop firing at you until they have stopped or have been stunned. And I know specialists, they'll activate their hider just to continue to get shot at. So yes, if you're a specialist, do not make the mistake of thinking your hider will save you from these guys, because they will continue shooting at you, aiming at you, until they're done. Now, I know some people say that Gunners need nerfed. I don't think they do, actually, though. I think Gunners are pretty balanced because they're not super common, and they're one trick as well. They're also they're extremely exploitable, too, because if you get one to rev up, they don't really move much, which means you can take advantage of their rev up to actually prevent them from advancing. Then you can take place behind corner to prepare. These guys are pretty deadly with a lot of firepower, dealing up to 36 damage on Hell, and I think it's 12 on 100%. And the nice thing, though, is stun abilities like Grapple Hook, Grenade Launcher, Terminal Stomping will completely reset these guys, which is a pretty fun little thing about them. And if you're a specialist, these guys are actually pretty rewarding to kill. You can get a lot of scrap out of them, and so they're actually kind of a blessing at times. Other than that, yeah, Gunners can be extremely painful, but they're not too bad, unless you're a scout. Scouts hate Gunners. Alright, moving on, we got the Sniper. I actually don't know where to put snipers. I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to put these guys at average, and I know it's going to sound strange. Snipers are 90% panic. They are fear fuel. They are... Because, yes, snipers deal 80 damage at base, which means they'll pretty much usually one-shot you on most difficulties. And they shoot high-speed projectiles. And snipers, they're known for this bright white glint and a laser that points straight at you, followed by this terrible beeping sound. This beeping sound is basically saying get to cover or you're gonna die. Snipers' reaction speed and fire rate does scale with difficulty, meaning on higher difficulties, they fire like no tomorrow. But the thing about snipers is their accuracy is 100%. They do have bullet drop, which isn't really relevant, but what's relevant is that they're 100% accurate and they track the player's movement to make sure that they land their shot. And I know this sounds like, oh, this makes them really powerful. Snipers are extremely exploitable. Not to mention that they announce their presence with the brightest glint you will ever see. These guys are super obvious. And dude, a lot of times if you just B-hop, they can't hit you. A lot of times they're very easy to take cover from. You just don't want to find yourself at mid-range with them. So you're either right next to them, instantly meleeing them, or you're at mid-range. If you're specialist or recon, these guys are no issue to you at all. If you're playing scout, they can be bad, and assault can also be pretty bad dealing with these guys. But other than that, they're not very common either, making them actually pretty easy to deal with. Ah, yes, the engineer. I did forget something. I forgot turrets and teleporters. Doesn't matter, we'll group them as one. The engineer, I'm going to put at... This is really dependent whether you catch them or not. A lot of times, though, you won't. I'm going to put these guys at extremely difficult. Engineers can end your run really easily. And if they don't end your run, they can put a great hurt. Engineers are stealthy units that if you don't remember to take out or at least pay notice to, they'll walk on their own while all the other enemies you're distracted and preoccupied fighting them. These guys will just stroll along the map, and eventually that's when horrors are unleashed. Now, if you manage to take them out before they reach their nest point, it's no big deal. They'd be at pushover point because you can melee them really easily. They're weak as can be. But once they nest, they plant a powerful turret, which, when leveled up enough, is able to shoot rockets and do an insane amount of damage. Teleporters, which will summon in all 4 infantry units, including saboteurs, which is why I really hate engineers. And on higher difficulties, they will send troops like no tomorrow, and the turret range is insane on high difficulties. So if you're playing Hell, I've actually can't tell you on Wave Ultima how many times people would jetpack from one island to the other, and they died to the turret, which is not even supposed to, like, really be used to kill players. It's supposed to be a self-defense item, but that's just how powerful turrets can be. Not to mention that fully leveled up gear have a lot of health. So overall, maybe these could be in strong, but this is really... These guys are kind of... They're either dead or they're making your run pure hell. And if they nest on your solo runs, say goodbye to your ammo. And say goodbye to your time as well. Next up, we got the Ranger. The doggy. These guys I'm gonna put at below. I'm gonna put at average below a sniper. A lot worse than a shielder and a cloaker due to the fact that they are ranged units and they're pretty fast. There's a few things that I have against these guys. First of all, close quarters is pretty bad because they charge up and explode. Though that depends on difficulty, and even on Hell, if they have low enough HP, you can usually one-shot melee them before they explode. But if you have low self-awareness and they come around a corner, they can catch you off guard, instantly killing you and your teammates. Not to mention that they can also blow up your gear. Rangers, more so, it's the orbs. They're orbs that they'll shoot at you, stick to surfaces, and deal up to I think it's up to 30 damage per orb. Yeah. They do a lot, by the way. And the orbs are extremely destructive, destroying equipment and everything. Other than that, they're not too bad, and they're pretty manageable. Hit registration for these guys is bad, so if you're somebody who wants to melee a ranger, they have 150 HP, and trust me, you'll always have that one guy that's like, oh, it's masochist, and I'm like, dude, health doesn't scale with difficulty. But you'll see that you dealt like 160 damage, and he's still alive, or you'll deal like 64 damage and you'll melee him, which is like 165 damage total, and he doesn't die. You gotta be careful of these guys. So usually I try to deal at least 100 damage first or close to it, then melee them. Other than that, like I said, they're pretty balanced units. They're mainly carried by the fact how common they are, because they're kind of like an infantry plus unit, I guess. But they can be mass EMP stunned very easily, which is nice. So if you're playing specialist, it's not too bad. APUs. These guys are solid. Put them at the bottom tier of average, mainly because they're not too common, and from afar, they're extremely weak. But the danger factor is when they initially drop in. Their drop in is an instant kill. And on Masochist isn't too bad, but it means that you have to kind of prepare to evade them, which is why teleporters are really nice, by the way. APUs are kind of fast too, and they have a lot of health and do a lot of damage. They don't scale difficulty, which is nice. But I've had times where I was camping in a spot and I had a teleporter get destroyed, and I'm like, I actually couldn't do anything because they're so tanky, and I didn't have the proper gear to take them out. I'm like, oh, and they would actually kill me. But that's pretty rare. In hell, they're really bad because they just drop in the middle of the wave. They don't drop in at the beginning. They just spawn whenever they feel like it, so they can catch you off guard really badly. Overall, not too bad though. Tanks. Boy, oh boy. These guys, I'm going to put at A tier. These guys, when you're on Archipelago, they're not too bad, other than the fact that they do destroy your turrets and rangers. And these guys are really bad for engineers, but even other people. Any other map outside of Archipelago that's not a base plate, like City, Mansion, Garden, these guys can be bad. They're tanky as can be, which, no shit, they're called tanks for a reason. They have a rail cannon, which charges up and does a lot of damage, and it's splash damage. So, I mean, even if they don't, even if they don't hit you directly, these guys can test teamwork. You can always have one guy at your outpost as a recon who just b-hops in front of the tanks and gets everybody killed. I actually had a garden match where it was Mechanized Meat Storm Wave 2. And it wasn't too bad. We kill the rangers when they got up, and then you wait for the tanks to be the last enemies. You'd slowly kill the tanks, but you have to be very careful because the moment you peek these guys, kaboom, that's it. Now, our engineers, despite the fact that they're supposed to be the ones that take out the tanks, the engineers spent more time taking our players out because they kept on b-hopping in front of the tanks, killing everybody. Tanks can be very bad, and their splash damage for some reason doesn't have a proper line of sight check. I don't know if it's buggy or what. But yeah, and if you try to melee a tank, the gas cans have 500 HP, and even though the tank itself won't blast you, the turret does a lot of damage. Even if you're playing assault with Rallying Cry, these guys hurt. Yeah, 5 damage per shot with machine gun, and the fire rate is very high. Luckily, their damage does not scale with difficulty, but their fire rate and their delay as well scales. So these guys can be pretty nasty. All right. Oh, I also be careful in City. I don't know.
Tell me if there's any enemies.
Underwear?
Whoa! What? How?
What?
Lie, we were the last one.
Hey, you could agree that was BS, right?
I did not peek anything.
Yeah, no, a tank just shot us through the fucking wall. This guy is bottom tier nightmare fuel, and respectably so. He's one of the units that is extremely overpowered, and it's very respectable. It makes sense. Platforms on normal gameplay are not very common, and usually they don't scale with unit count, so that's nice. But these guys are a ticking time bomb just like the engineer, except for when they perch, they don't send out additional troops to fight you, they drop mortars on top of you. Now, platforms are extremely tanky, and the only way that you can take them out is by destroying their emplacements, which have a lot of health and do a pretty respectable amount of damage. In other words, you can't really tank them for that long. You're going to have to get some form of healing. Not to mention that these guys will snipe your rockets from super far away. So if you're trying to take out a tank with your rocket stormer, dude, I've had a platform take out rockets from 500 studs away. I'm like, dude, I'm not even targeting you. Oh, and a pro tip for rocket stormer users, it's easier to take out a platform once it's already perched. And they also, for some reason, I think platforms, they pre-aggro onto rockets that are guided. So don't guide your rockets. Now, Rockstormer is known to be like the worst option for killing platforms, but it's also the best option if you're like playing aggressive like scout or assault, because you can actually rush the platform and that's a good way to kill it. If you don't mind getting shot a bunch by emplacements. This guy, if you don't have like something like an armor peeler, or at least something to do like armor damage, you're just, I know you can take it out with emplacements, but you're gonna have to take your sweet time destroying all the emplacements. It's gonna perch, by the way. Then you're gonna enrage it, in which it's gonna have 1,000 health, which can't be dealt mech damage. So now your rockets, which normally would do 1,000 damage, only do 200 damage or whatever, and you're just gonna work. Not to mention that their fire rate scales with difficulty, and on Hell, they fire faster than they land, meaning they have a 100% telegraph uptime. And these are known for destroying like teleporters and everything. So usually the best strat when one perches is to have one guy whistle in a safe spot to distract the platform while everyone else takes it out, to prevent team wiping, suppression, and equipment destruction. But these guys can be pretty nasty. Moving on, once again, the Tranquilizer. These guys are, I'm going to put them above the Sniper. A funny thing about a Tranquilizer is that they're actually more akin to an infantry in terms of AI, because Tranquilizers will kneel down to fire at you, but they don't really like do it as soon as they go around corners. Infantry or Tranquilizers will actually pursue you just like infantry, and will only stop when they have line of sight with a target. These guys will fire pretty swiftly, and there's really no indicator. There's no laser, no cool little glint or beeping sound. It's an instant fire. And sure, even though it's not like a one-shot kill, these guys are still really bad. If they get a direct hit, it does a really good amount of damage and also debuffs you with slowness. Not to mention that their acid pulls will slow you down and they will burn a lot of damage, which it can also, it can cut off your mobility and destroy equipment as well. There's not much else to be said about these guys, but if you always had if you kill a Tranquilizer while a dart is in you, there's a good chance you may have experienced the dreaded dart bug, where you have the slowness effect on you permanently, and the only way to fix it is by dying. But yeah, these guys are annoying. They're not usually your cause of death, but they can lead to it. Anyways, next up is the Medic. These guys. I'm going to put these at the low end of extremely difficult, because medics are, they're cunning and they're mean. They are non-offensive units, but they find a way to make you hate your life. Coming with 200 HP, which is quite a bit, these guys will make any unit that you fight near invincible. Because they will instantly, you'll have a gunner at like no health, and then all of a sudden a medic will tether across them from across the map, instantly healing. Not to mention that there's the Vita Charge mechanic, which literally makes himself and his target completely invincible for the duration. And not to mention that there's also a passive overhealing effect, which I'm still learning about. It increases their max health. So, if you've ever tried to like melee an enemy that's usually one shot, and then him not die, good chances that he's been buffed by a medic, and there's no real indicator by this. Medics, all in all, just make your game hell. They're bad in Epilogue, and they're especially bad in Hell mode. There's not much else to say. They're just extremely annoying, especially if you grapple a shielder as an assault, and next thing you know, the first swing doesn't kill the shielder. You're like, what? Or you grapple the shielder in, and then a medic out of nowhere just decides to charge him or heal him. It's a terrible experience. Oh, by the way, this is also the same reason that people who try to make the argument, oh, Gift of Fire is good in Epilogue, completely invalid. Because if you're spawn camping, Gift of Fire is a terrible option, because the moment you have a medic gunner combo walk in, they're going to instantly Vita Charge. And sure, you'll kill all the fodder units, but then you'll just lead this walking death combo. And then normally the best way to deal with spawns is just by camping with an overcharger. At least with the overcharger combo, you have fodders to kill, and you can go invincible and actually kill them properly. All Get to Fire does is prevent players from getting overcharged and to be able to deal with these major threats. So you're just killing off fuel sources. Don't buy Gift of Fire in Epilogue, please. If anything, I would say don't buy Gift of Fire, but you know, you're gonna play the game how you want to. Yeah, these guys suck though. Administrators. First F tier. I don't know what else to say about him. I mean, he's pretty weak. I mean, he does 5 damage per shot, which scales the difficulty. Though I did actually once die to this guy. We were doing Hell Epilogue just for funny, and I think I was playing Specialist. I had 30-something health, and a medic like was in there with him, healed him, and I went to melee him. Because he didn't die, he like 2-tapped me. And I was like, whoa, what? And then I realized, oh yeah, it's 300% difficulty. It was not one of my most proud deaths per se. But other than that, he's a very easy unit. He's basically just an objective tool. Alright, now we move on to our bosses. Starting with, oh boy, Daedalus. This guy is very flexible. He has a few spots, but in my experience, I'm going to put him at the low end of Nightmare Fuel. Daedalus is a Wave 9 boss disguised as a Wave 3 boss, in my opinion. Okay, not exactly, I know. And there's going to be a lot of the comments about, you know, scout mains and spec mains be like, he's really easy to fight, dude. I solo him all the time. That's not the problem. Your experience with him is not the problem. The thing about Daedalus is he is valid as a Wave 3 boss because, you know, like, you wouldn't have, like, Hermes or Achilles on Wave 3 because you need proper equipment to be able to comfortably take these guys out. Daedalus, you don't really need any, like, equipment to take him out. You just need skill and good positioning. I definitely can't deny compared to, like, Tempest and Fusilier, he's by far way stronger than the other 2 Wave 3 bosses. And in solo runs, he can be pretty bad because he's unavoidable. He stuns and disables jetpacks for so long. He's a one-shot kill on most difficulties. And once again, I know, hell mode, blah, 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 you bring it up a lot. On Wave Ultima, if this guy does not die, it's GG. Because his stomp radius and everything is across the map. He disables jetpacks for like 5 years. And there's also the perma-stun bug that can occur, which happens if you're on slopes, or if you're jumping, or holding the wrong items, or bad luck. If you're on a solo run, he can be pretty bad because you really can't fight other enemies. They're going to be advancing towards you, so it's kind of a race against time. And he's really tanky. He constantly disables your weapons, like makes you unequip them, and he's always iframing as he goes underground. And he's one of those units that you really can't avoid because his method of closing the gaps is literally pretty much just teleportation. And I've had times where he would jump out like towards me, like as if he jumped out of a wall, and there was no wall there. And I've also had times where you'd be jetpacking or like air rigging, and he'd jump out of the air and snipe you. Like, what? Oh, and if your game's laggy, just give up. Daedalus is by far, in my opinion, one of the most powerful bosses. He can be easy to fight, and he is a reasonable fight at times, but if things get out of hand, it's like Pandora's box all over again. Moving on, we got Tempest. Tempest varies a lot. My opinion, he's going to go on the high end of weak. Tempest is actually a pretty easy boss, but he does have a few mechanics, and there's a few factors that can actually make him pretty dangerous. So, for low difficulties, yes, he is one of the stronger bosses because he's not, like, he doesn't really scale with difficulty much. The thing about Tempest is he's fast. He actually moves, like, a lot of people underestimate him. If you're doing solo, he can be pretty bad. And if you're doing Masochist full squad, and you and your team just ignore him, which is very common to do. That's why I call him a sleeper boss, because we've been wiped by this guy on hell mode a lot because people would just ignore him. Because like, oh, he's the easy boss. Yet, his damage at base isn't a lot, but if you don't have a way to like get away from it or take cover, he can actually really chip at your health a lot. Also, not to mention his chain damage is absolutely devastating. So if you're in big groups and you let him get too close, it's bad. But the fact that he also will ignore solo targets for groups means he'll walk right past you sometimes, and you could just sit there and just like shoot at him until he dies. Not to mention that he doesn't do any like strafing or any of that. He's not super tanky. Overall, he's pretty easy. Just, you know, don't let him get out of hand. Take good cover. If anything, just don't ignore him. That's all. Just don't get too comfortable with him. We got Fusilier. This guy is bottom of week. Can you even consider this guy a boss? I mean, he's more so this giant nuisance. He's really tanky. Well, decently tanky for a boss. He strafes a lot, and he's constantly firing grenades. He's more so there to pester you than really to be a boss. He's very slow as well, and his strafing only slows him down more. And the fact that you can pick up grenades to throw at him, why does he need that weakness? He's already weak enough. Not to mention, if you're not playing on Shell Shock and above, his range on his grenade launcher is super limited. Not to mention that even if you are, like, even if you're playing with high enough difficulties where he can fire across the map, his grenade registration will eventually just fail after certain distances, where it'll, like, you'll see a grenade land in front of you and then just not blow up. He's really super easy to deal with. He's really not that dangerous. But then again, try not to ignore him too much. Oh, right. Gaia. I have some mixed experiences with her, actually. I'm going to put her at the... She's not super common. It's not like old Gaia where she used to be a literal god. I'm going to put her... APUs are... I want to put her at the lowest point of average. Gaia, I know, is known to be the pushover. Gaia's actually pretty strong because she's really tanky, has great... She's probably one of the most slowest bosses to kill. Not to mention that her firepower with her and her escorts combined is actually extremely high. Not to mention that if you kill her with her escorts still alive, her escorts move... They start sweeping the map pretty fast. Other than that, though, she's really not too bad, and you just gotta be a little careful with her. But yeah, like, compared to, like, Fusilier and Tempest, she's a lot more dangerous. Like, her only weakness is that she's slow. And that if her and her escorts get separated, they kind of act stupid. So, on hills, they fall off, and they kind of just get stuck sometimes. Other than that, though, we've had a lot of experience with Gaia. Is pretty average. Usually her most dangerous factor is you gotta watch your ammo as you're just wasting it into her. So she kind of sucks to fight, but I know in Wave Ultima she has been like the reason we died, because she's also a literal... She's like a wall. She locks down areas. She's immovable. You cannot... She'll push you out of your spot. Slowly, but surely. She's like the immortal snail almost. Not to mention that if you can't see her, if you kill her without killing her escorts, that Ultima fog is thick, and they will go around, they will start sweeping everyone. Like, it's usually a death sentence. But all in all, she's usually not too bad. Alright. I'm just gonna play the clip from here. This problem is infantry back there. Oh my god, I was like, dude, where did you... I spawned you back there. What? What? What the fuck? What? Hermes is... Okay, Hermes will chase you if you're out there. I see what Joe's talking about. Nah, I have to send that to him. I have to clip that. Dude, that is crazy. Yeah, that's not a common thing that does happen. But... that was the first time, actually, that happened today. And I was kind of already expecting him to die. And I thought it was more so funny than anything. I was kind of shaken up, but... Hermes, I know a lot of... He's super difficulty dependent, just like Daedalus and Achilles. But I'm speaking from my experience. Hermes is terrible. He's a Wave 9 boss any day of the week. Let's start with the fact that Hermes has 400 HP worth of rocket pods. He's an aerial boss that really, it's hard to take cover from him. He fires rockets and shit at you, destroying you and equipment, and it can also go through buildings when it's not supposed to. His health formula is really thick. He's tanky as can be, moves a lot. His minigun does a lot of damage. He rushes. It's basically rush or be rushed with him. And he is one of the, I swear, from my experience, out of all bosses, Hermes is the number one when it comes to team wiping. I swear to God, it's either Hermes dies immediately or he kills everyone immediately. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, Hermes is easy. He always dies immediately. The reason why he dies so fast is because people are like, nah, I ain't having that. They all band together and they absolutely destroy him because they know what he's capable of. So I'm going to go ahead and put this guy, I'm going to put him probably above Daedalus. I don't know, sometimes they switch places, but I'm going to put him here. The only reason he's below Saboteur is because he's one boss, so you're not going to constantly have to deal with him. But he's a very easy run ender, especially if you're doing solo. Hermes is terrible. Next up, we got our good friend Prometheus. Prometheus is really hit and miss, but he is, I'm going to say he's really underestimated at times. I'm going to put him at strong above Gunner, if it would let me. Okay. It's kind of finicky. Okay. Here's why. So Prometheus is typically not too bad if you have a good setup. Most public runs you'll ever do, if you're on like 100% or below, he dies really fast. But Prometheus is the fastest boss on foot, being able to sprint across the map with insane speed, especially when enraged. And he can be a bit unpredictable with his incendiary launcher, so Prometheus a lot of times is not too bad, but if you're playing solo and you don't have like a way to escape, he can be pretty bad. And our team, we've been we've moved on from Archipelago and we're trying to beat Hell City. The worst boss, actually, is Prometheus. He is the number one dominator on Hell City because his gas cans don't do as much, and his dash range is literally across the map. So if he can see you, he can dash, and he will destroy. Prometheus's killing power is insane. It's just the fact that if you have an easy way to get away from him, like a teleporter or a high-level jetpack, he's not too bad. But he is really situational. He's either really easy or he's absolutely the worst. Like, no in between. Moving on, we got... oh, buddy! Achilles. This guy is no joke. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to try to base this too much on my personal experience because I want to base this on group experience. I am king when it comes to Daedalus. Daedalus is one of my prides in killing, the same with Hermes. The only problem is Hermes sometimes, even with as much skill as you have, Hermes is just like, well, GG anyways. I'm sorry, I'm usually really good at killing Hermes, but that's as a recon main. If I'm on Urban, I don't know what to do. But speaking from experience, Achilles would go right below Hermes, in my opinion, because Achilles is a very formidable threat. He is extremely hard to kill because of his teleporter and the fact that he's a sniper boss. He has a short reaction speed with an instant killing power. And I'm going to give some hot takes about this guy in a moment. Before I do that, Achilles is super difficulty dependent because his reaction speed, his movement speed, and his drone, health, and uptime all depend on difficulty. If you played Masochist, you probably know this guy to be pretty bad. If you played Hell Mode, you've probably known, hey, this guy is really bad because he runs roughly at the same speed as Prometheus. I'm not joking. He runs insanely fast on foot. And his reaction speed is... it's capped, so it's no faster than Masochist. But after the boss rush of, like, Daedalus, Sparta, and Hermes, after you've taken them out and some other bosses, Achilles is the next big checkpoint. And that's usually where a lot of people die. Because if you don't kill Achilles fast enough, he's a huge suppressor. Now, he's kind of map dependent. On Coastal, he's not too bad, though. He could still be pretty nasty on Coastal if you don't know how to handle him right. But on bigger maps like City, Archipelago, Garden, if he gets up the ramp, it's over pretty much. He's pretty easy to keep down, but the nice thing about Achilles is he's probably the most understandably strong boss because he is a wave 9 boss. He's meant to be a very powerful threat. And the methods of taking him out, you actually get two methods, which is either shoot his drone and shoot him. This really only works if you have the right weaponry, and it's really, really tedious because his drone, you have to fire one shot at his drone and then as much as you can into him, which is a really short uptime. Not to mention, you're also trying not to get your ass sniped by him. But yeah. Now, a lot of people talk about like, oh, good thing old Achilles. Dude, I'm so glad he's not in the game anymore. I'm sorry, I'm not, okay, I'm speaking as a 2.0 player, but, so I can't really speak from experience, but I'm gonna be real with you. As someone who has spoke to, like, old Achilles, like, people who've, like, known old Achilles, I've experienced early 2.0 Achilles, and he was pretty bad, and I've experienced modern Achilles. Now, old Achilles might have been, from what I hear from a lot of, like, experienced players, is that old Achilles is probably equally as bad as modern Achilles because of several factors, but dealing with him is not as bad as people make it out to be. Now, you also gotta remember, too, if I was to experience old Achilles, I probably wouldn't think he's that bad because he existed when difficulty factor wasn't a thing. Modern Achilles on the right difficulties can be the worst experience you'll ever hear. So, early 2.0 Achilles was bad because he had uncapped reaction speed, meaning in hell, he'd flashbang you and he'd just fire like a gunner. Like, it was instant tap. But his accuracy was also pretty garbage, which is really funny. And, like, he'd just miss all of his shots. Modern Achilles does not miss, by the way. Even though he's capped, he is probably by far the worst thing to experience. Not to mention that early 2.0 Achilles health formula was backwards, so it was more like he had like 800 health at max. For some reason, since they changed it to where now he has 1600 health. It's 200 health per player. I don't know why. He's a sniper boss. He's already strong enough. And he's already hard to kill, but whatever. Alright, next up is Trident. Why is he a wave 9 boss? The only people freaking out are the new players that don't know that you can just shoot the orbs to break free. Why is he a wave 9 boss? Like, I think the idea was that you had to get grappled first so that way you could shoot him, and then you had to take advantage of the downtime. But you don't really have to get grappled. I mean, first of all, it's super easy to dodge. Not to mention, if you just take cover, he won't grapple you. So, I mean, sure, he mangles you. Me personally, if I was a developer of the game, I would have made him had like a riot shield because it's on theme for him. And the only way for him to like lower his riot shield is once he's grappled a player. That way you have to get grappled, or at least try to hit him from behind. And to be honest, too, I know it sounds absurd, but what if he mutilated players? After all, his whole thing is he is the executioner. He kills players one by one. He is very slow about killing players. Also, come on, dude. Nobody took the time to fix his health formula, so he just has 1050 at anything above, like, 2 players. Not to mention that if you throw a hallucinator at him, he's basically just there. Like, he just doesn't do anything for, like, he just, I don't know, he just contemplates his life decisions because he saw a funny blue man, and then he realized it's not real. Come on, dude. Put him in wave 6 at this point. Or, dude, wave 3, honestly. I don't know. Moving on. Sparta. I like this guy. He's situational, actually. He can be pretty easy, but to be honest, compared to Daedalus, I'm going to put him below Daedalus at extremely difficult. And I have a reason why. Sparta, if you were fighting him as intended, is actually way worse than Daedalus. I've had times, actually, I have a clip of this that I uploaded on my channel, and if for some reason it got a lot of views. It was just me clipping like a clutch moment that I had on City, because I had like a bunch of enemies after me and I had like no jet fuel. If you have a jetpack though, this guy is really not too hard at all. The thing about him is that when on ground, you have to like dodge him and fight him at the same time. It's super hard. It's like, holy god. But the problem is with him is that once you're in the air, you can take advantage of him so much, like, because he just kind of, For a man who has a jetpack, he sure is bad with handling aerial targets. It would have made sense if you'd at least go after somebody who is not in the air, or if he could jump up and do like a little melee slash, like a contact one that dealt like maybe like 15 damage, just to like try to scare people from staying in the air. On the ground, he can be a monster, and in general, he can be pretty bad. But Daedalus, he takes care of the situation by completely disabling your jets. So yeah, he is situational. At times, he actually can be worse than Daedalus. But from experience, I'm just going to say Daedalus is much worse. And our last guy, Ares. This guy has left many players shell-shocked, leaving people with horrors on their mind, making them regret their decisions. This man is one of the most wretched beings to ever exist, and rightfully so. He is Ares, the god of war. He is a man of war. Now, up front, he doesn't have the most killing power. He's not the, like, immediately like, oh, I'm going to team wipe you. No, that's not why he's so bad. If you fight him on Epilogue, he's more of something that you have to avoid. And honestly, on Epilogue, he's really not that bad. That's not where he shines. On Wave Ultima, this man is single-handedly definitely the final boss. I've watched this guy solo, I almost said Minos, London Prime, which is pretty much just Minos Prime, but I've watched him solo London Prime. Now, I know you're probably like, what? No, I don't mean like he literally fought London to death. But I've watched London try to fight this guy. Ares was completely oblivious. Remember, Ares is immortal. He cannot be killed in any way. And London ended up getting himself killed while trying to kill Ares. It was pretty funny. This guy, though, has an arsenal like no tomorrow. Is capable of killing, mangling, and mutilating. And he destroys equipment. He's sporadic and aggressive. And the reason why he's so bad is because of the fact that he's immortal throughout the entirety of Wave Ultima. So you will watch all 10 boss bars disappear, one by one. Next thing you know, Ares, for some reason, his boss bar will stay there forever. Because he has to be the very last man to die. And even though most of his attacks won't hit you, if you're jetpacking, his LMG will shred you. If you happen to get too comfortable or unaware, he'll come up right up to you, knife dash you. And that's the thing too, you have to be aware with this guy, because once he ends up on your island, he'll kill you and he'll start destroying all of your equipment, your teleporters, your turrets, and everything except for your lifelines. I don't know why, but him and Prometheus will destroy all of your equipment except for your lifelines. But this guy will destroy everything, completely shutting down islands. So we made a call out, instead of, oh, Island 3 TP down, we'll just say Island 3 down. Ares destroyed it, and then it's like, fuck. Because those teleporters are a lifesaver. This man will destroy everything he can. And he's fat. Even though most of the time he'll spend time walking, eventually he'll go into bloodlust mode. He hauls ass. He will sprint across the map. And you won't really, like, notice it at first, but you'll, like, turn away for a moment, turn back, and he'll be right there getting ready to slice you open. And you'll jetpack away, and you'll be like, oh, man, I got away. Next thing you know, a random blade will come flying by, hit you. Moments later, you'll hear a sound, you'll explode, it's over. And the scariest thing, too, is if you're in bunker camping, he gets down to you. That's another thing, mutilation. And the worst sound you could ever hear with Ares is that dreaded beeping. Those rockets on Epilogue, I swear to God, for some reason on Siege, are so much worse. And I can't tell you how many times those rockets would come flying by, just kill everyone. Just with the sheer blast radius of them. They're seeking rockets, by the way. You dodge them the first time, you'll have to jet a couple more times, because they're going to do a few circles and try to hit you. And even if they don't hit you, if they hit a surface even like a little close to you, for some reason, it will just blast you to the moon and back. This man has earned the title of being one of the worst units in the game. And respectfully so, he's earned it. But let me tell you, getting that final kill on him, that's an experience like no other. But yes, that is it for this tier list. I changed this tier list a little bit because the wording was kind of weird. So starting off, we have infantry. I'm gonna put these guys here at B tier. Why? Because they're just, I don't know, they're kind of part of the game's core, and without them, it would make quite a big difference. These guys are the most common fodder units, yet they're also still a very formidable threat at times. They can be very dangerous, but they're also still balanced despite the fact that they're very dangerous. They're very simple and easy to deal with, at least. And they definitely have a huge impact on the game. All in all, I think they're very balanced. They throw grenades at times, which is, pretty staple for an infantry AI, and you can throw it back as well. So if you hate grenades, at least you can, get them out of the way. Now, no, you can't throw them back at the infantry and blow them up. So next up, we got cloakers. I don't think they're that well designed. I don't know. I'm debating. I'm gonna put them at poor, kind of. I don't know, because the problem with these guys is AI pathfinding. These guys are buggy as can be. And all in all, they're just... I mean, they're pretty iconic, but they're not too original, and I'm gonna be real. They are not really a necessity for the game to be as good as it is, but I will say they do make for some funny stories, and they're still fun to have. I do not hate cloakers. I'm glad that they're in the game. So yeah, and Payday fans, it helps make sure that they stay on their toes and remember that God hates them. Like, dear God, now I have to experience these guys in some random Roblox game. Why? But yeah, moving on, we got the Shielder. These guys are solid. I like them. They actually serve a pretty good purpose. And they're fair. They're not too bad. They're really not too bad, but they can catch a player off guard. But they are the reason you can't just go into a horde and melee a bunch of enemies. Granted, that kind of is defeated by the spec artillery strike, which in general spec is just way too OP to begin with. That's not our Shielder's fault, but the Shielder does a good job at, encouraging players to use a little bit more skill. Keeps you from just rushing enemies, because the Cloaker, even the Cloaker, you can rush a Cloaker and come out fine. Granted, it's a bit risky, but a Shielder, you don't want to do that. And air rig users, you guys are going to be on your toes when sweeping a horde of enemies. In general, those shielders aren't going to be the only things you have to watch out for. Saboteurs. F. These guys are cool. They have a cool concept. I don't know. I'm going to put them at the low D tier, actually, because Saboteurs are actually very decently well made, actually. Like, there's a lot about them. They're very unique. And they help counter a lot. They keep engineers and recons on their toes, and just, and they're not too bad for assaults, but they're just too powerful. They're like the specialist of enemies. For them to be common spawn the way they are, and I've already explained to you why, they're just wretched. And even though assaults and like scouts can make light work of these guys, they find ways to fuck with them too, in the form of landmines. These guys in general, they need a nerf. Landmines are cool, but I don't think Saboteurs, which are supposed to be stealthy assassin units and hackers, are supposed to be placing landmines. You should make that like a separate enemy called, like, I don't know, the Trapper. He walks around the map like an engineer and occasionally places landmines to kind of mess with players. That would be fine. Saboteurs just turn everything into a mess, though. If they were nerfed and reworked a bit, I'd actually put them probably around S tier, because they are really cool, though. I respect their design, but they're just a bit too much. They got a little too much love. Next up, you got Grenadiers. High solid, because even though they're not really like a staple of the game, Grenadiers, I like them because it shows the diversity of the game's enemies you're dealing with. Not all enemies are there just to kill. This guy serves a purpose of being a nuisance and making your game more difficult without directly harming the player. And he does a good job at it. He's pretty actually problematic at times. Very balanced. The only thing is, I think it's weird that he has 210 HP. I would probably reduce his health a bit. Yeah, and strafing is pretty annoying as well. But I mean, I keep the strafing because that's fair. These guys cannot deal any damage. They really don't have much of a way to actually defend themselves. What's up? You got jetpackers. Who the fuck made these? Are you kidding me? These are gotta be the wackiest, goofiest motherfuckers in the entire game. And they're even wild in gameplay and execution. They're like, I almost like them because of just how terrible jetpackers are. First of all, you know, most of these units are pretty cool. They have a cool premise, like an infantry is a soldier, a shielder is a shotgunner unit with a shield. I mean, you got, like, the jetpacker has to be the most, one of the most cartoony, wackiest units in the game. Like, we're gonna give this guy a jetpack, and instead of, like, oh, he can, like, hover in the air and then, like, try to, like, shoot some shots over you with, like, a high-power rifle. No, let's just stick him with an RPG and a jetpack. Like, I'm sorry, doesn't that sound kind of goofy? I mean, it's funny, but to make them matters worse, this unit in general is also just horrible to deal with. It's so unbalanced and unfair. This guy, like I said, he peeks through he sees you through walls. That is not really like a good way to avoid him. Like, if you take cover, he holds his shots until he can see you, and that means if you're behind a wall, he'll just go over behind the wall and hit you anyways, instantly killing you. Or if he doesn't, you know what? Oh, I can't hit you? Why don't I just hit the other guy across the map unannounced for no reason? So this other guy's like, why even killed me? Like, jetpacker's probably got to be one of the most, like, unfair units in the game. What I would have done for the jetpacker probably is, instead of him, like, flinging himself towards you, what I would have done is instead, he would have, like, lifted himself vertically off the ground, hovered in the air for a moment, and then shot at you, and then go back down. In other words, he only goes up and then down. This would make him pretty strong because he could peek over walls. Other than that, though, yeah, I wouldn't have given him an RPG either. I would have maybe given him something like a light explosive launcher, but, like, maybe a rifle with, like, heavy rounds. I don't know. This guy is just... Why? And Bullock adding the drive-by mechanic, I've already expressed my thoughts on that earlier. The gunner. I'm gonna be real with you. This guy, he deserves more love and more appreciation. And I know scout mains are probably like, what? And I understand your hate for this guy. But he's a respectable unit. He is. He's not super common. And his whole design is around being mean and heavy. He's intimidating. He's a gunner. When you hear infantry, you think, oh, yeah, I mean, he might shoot at me. When you hear gunner, you're like, oh shit. It's intimidating. And the gunner actually does his job very well. The gunner... I've seen games mess this up. I played Warframe, and Warframe has a unit called a heavy gunner. And the heavy gunner is just terribly designed. Like a gunner, he charges up and then fires. Now, it's not like he charges up and then fires. It's more so he starts firing, it starts slowly. His bullets start to fire faster and faster as he charges up, which is fine. The only problem with the gunner in Warframe is that as soon as you hide behind a wall, he stops firing. And I've even had people mock the gunner in DvN, like, oh, the gunner's stupid. I'm behind a wall. Why is he still firing? The gunner isn't actually supposed to kill you, by the way. He's a suppressor unit. And Half-Life Alyx does a really good job on their gunners. Their gunners are literally called suppressors. Because their goal isn't to kill you. It's to force you into cover so it limits your mobility. That's why they keep firing. And also, you realize if a gunner stops firing, every time he stops firing, he's going to have to recharge. Meaning, as soon as you go behind a wall, he's going to have to recharge again. I'm like, what? But the gunner overall is well designed. And it's cool. Like, he has strong counters to him. Like, he's not just really OP. He's actually pretty fair. He's very simple. And he humbles units like scout players. Overall, he's a very respectable unit. And he's strong. He has 350 health, which is a lot. But once again, he's a gunner. I probably would have maybe given him more like 300 health instead of 350. But I don't hate him. I really don't. He's actually a good unit. The sniper. I mean, every game has to have their sniper. DvN snipers are cool. I like how they make their presence decently well known and they try to give you a warning. They're very dangerous. And I like how you can actually dodge their projectiles, but they like track your movement to make sure you don't just walk in a straight line to dodge them. The only issue is that, this is kind of hard to avoid, I do coding for Minecraft, and I'm working on my own project called Eternal Decay. You might have heard of it. I'm not going to explain it, but movement tracking is exploitable as it can be, by the way. Bee hopping is all it takes to just get this guy off your back. Not to mention on higher difficulties, he just fires like a machine gun. He scales with difficulty a little too hard. Other than that, though, all in all, a good unit. The engineer. I like this guy. I hate him and I like him. I'm putting him above the gunner hat. Really, really good. This guy, I like him because he's like a taking time bomb, and he's really easy to ignore. I like how he starts off being almost completely harmless. But that's what he does. He hides himself, conceals himself by acting innocent and creeping. He sneaks his way across the map while his comrades will do all the distracting and all the dirty work. But when you let him cook, this guy is a very formidable problem. Now, I definitely feel like at times he can be a little brutal, and there can be some balance issues with him. But the ability to be able to place a turret and a teleporter, cool. I like it. It's a very good mechanic overall. Like he's solid, and he's strong as can be, but he's not frequent, and he's preventable. Yeah, Ranger. I'm gonna put him in the low end of solid. Rangers, I almost want to put him at poorly designed. Rangers, I have my gripes with them. They don't actually add a whole lot to the game. They are unique, I will say. Hunters, or not hunters, Striders. I call them hunters because even though the Strider is called a Strider, it's not actually based off a Strider. The Strider is actually based off the Half-Life Hunter, which works a bit differently. The Ranger is, I don't know. It utilizes a good mechanic. Like has a lot of firepower, but he's very easy to avoid. But he kind of rushes you down fast. So we'll say, and it is cool to have like a light mech unit. So it is definitely unique and does add a little bit of spice. But there's nothing really wrong with it inherently. Hit registration with this guy's bad though. I've already explained that earlier, and I don't like that. APUs. These guys, I have to determine this one. This one's hard for me, actually. Okay, I'm gonna put them out amazing, and this is by a little bit of a bias. APUs had a really awesome glow up, and their design is so cool, by the way. APUs back then were known as just mechs. And mechs were basically glorified operated infantry units. I know a lot of people miss old mech units, but I don't. I fought them. They're kind of garbage actually, but they're fun. They really didn't bring anything to the game. These guys, not only do they look so much cooler and they're so much cleaner, they bring a new mechanic to the game to try to mess with the player, which is the fact that if you nestle into your spot too much, they're going to drop on you. But they're still not too bad to deal with. Though having 500 HP when they clearly are not like armored on the body is weird, and their health pools in general are just weird. But they're perfectly balanced, but they can be I know they can be a real nuisance to new players, that's for sure. All in all, though, I love the changes they made. It was a really cool design, and it really keeps you on your toes a bit. The drop-in mechanic in general is just so awesome. Oh yeah. And moving on. Tanks! I'll put this one at really good. A high really good. I like him. There are some things that I have gripe-wise, but the tank is really strong and just causes so much issues at time. It's cool. The rail cannon's concept is cool. He is The tank can make your life just a miserable hell, but it's a tank, for Christ's sake. Of course the tank is going to be dangerous. Of course the tank is going to be hard to kill. But I do like that they added, like, the gas cans in the back. And, you know, all in all, I would have changed, like, maybe some things. It's weird how it has the inaccuracy system is weird as can be. And just a lot of behaviors of it's weird. It's like, apparently tanks are capable of team killing. I don't know why that's a thing. And I don't know if that was intentional. Yeah, okay, I'll just queue up a clip. It's not a very good clip. I have one somewhere that is better, but I can't find it, but I'll just queue up this one.
Run. Wait, did the tanks kill the APUs? Wait, what?
Just some little weird loose ends. All in all, though, a very staple unit to have to the game. And it's one of the... he's actually semi-responsible for one of the reasons I really love the game. Is because a lot of Siege games just have the same type of units. The variety is so cool because not only do you have all these type of, like, humanoid units, but the tank, it's like, oh my god, this game has huge mech units, too. And that's where I really like our next guy, the platform. I don't care how buggy this guy is. I don't care. The platform is an amazing concept and a terrifying monstrosity. Putting bugs aside and just weird mechanics in general, and some mild poor handling, looks so cool. And I'm glad that they didn't just, like, take, like, Striders from Half-Life 2 and call that, like, the major mech unit. This guy's cool because he's like an engineer that he spawns from one point and then walks to the other. And the turrets along the way protect him. You have to, like, take him out before purchase, and if he does, launches mortars, completely pushing you out of your spot. And he's a very dangerous and formidable unit, but it's respectable, you know? I keep saying that word a lot, respectable. But he is, you know. You're not gonna look at that and think, oh, this guy's a pushover. You're gonna look at this thing walking by and you're gonna be like, what the hell is that? What's gonna happen? What do I do? But yeah. Okay, tranquilizer. Put him above range. Okay. Tranquilizer is, I don't know. Just put him in this for the sake of having more enemies here. Yeah. I actually like the Tranquilizer decent a bit, but the Tranquilizer is such a weird unit. Kind of like the Jetpacker, but it's not as weird. The shooting darts at stunning the player, I guess, makes sense, but it doesn't even fit in its spot in Epilogue, which is weird because Epilogue already has hallway snipers for God knows what reason. The fact that it leaves acid pools is like, it's a unique gameplay mechanic, but it's just weird. Like, is this guy, like, is he supposed to be a tranquilizer, or is he supposed to be like an acid spitter? What is he? I will say, don't get me wrong, he does introduce actual gameplay mechanics to make him unique, but I don't know. He's buggy as can be. His behavior is just weird. I don't understand him entirely. Weird as can be. I'll put him above the tranquilizer. The medic is actually something I like. First of all, the originality isn't too original since it's just a TF2 medic with Uber charge, but that's fine. The only reason I would put him higher is because he's like the Grenadier, where it's one of the few units that doesn't do any damage, but still is very threatening. The biggest issue, though, is sometimes a medic is just too overpowered and just too painful. Like, a lot of times you'll be more focused on him than any other units, which I guess is kind of intentional, but how do I explain why this guy is just terrible at times? I was wanting to see, like, the dude, like, killing Rangers, APUs, and, like, gas tanks on platforms, but I just don't know how I feel about a Vita-charged platform. Yeah, and you know, a long time I didn't even know he could do that, and it all makes sense. The dude can do whatever the hell he wants to a unit, as long as it's not protected by armor. Which means that if you enrage a platform, you get that as a result. Moving on. Administrator. I get the purpose that he's just supposed to be like a key card holder, and he does a little damage just to spook you. This little hiding hole is just it's like a 5x5 like carving in a stone wall. Like it would be cool to like put him in like a little office room or something, or like something like maybe a little bit more than, I don't know. He just like, he doesn't even like have any real AI. Like I mean, I'm not gonna hate on this guy too much because he's really not supposed to be that significant to begin with, but put him above the jetpacker because he's not absurd at least. But it's like, no, who cares about this guy? Other than the one time that I did get two tapped by one, but we don't speak on that. Data list. All right, we're getting to our bosses now. Data list. I'm gonna put him below infantry. Daedalus is a significant boss because he's a boss that counters a lot of things. In my opinion, he's almost a melee boss done perfect. Now, here's the things that I like about him. I like him because he's strong, and he's not exploitable. He's actually abusive as can be, and he is fun, scary, and he actually incorporates team play mechanics. Because actually, hold on, let's put him at a like high staple at least. He's just, I don't know. I like, the only issues with him that I have are, first of all, he is kind of cartoony, like the jetpacker. Like, he's able to like burrow underground, like he's just a miner with a pickaxe. Dude's able to just thrust himself into the ground and burst out. He has no augmentations. Like, Ares is like the super unit, but Ares is augmented like crazy. He has body modifications and stuff to make him strong. And he just feels out of place for the theme. But overall, he is iconic as can be. And the only thing is he scales with difficulty really hard, like too hard. And he has some RNG factors that make him kind of a little unfair, as in you might get bad luck. And just some bugs about him. But he is a melee boss that's not gonna take any of your shit, by the way. Like, if you're gonna be like, huh, I got a jetpack, what are you gonna do? You only have a melee. He's gonna throw a rock at you, send you straight to the floor, and you're gonna have your jetpacks disabled for, well, a little too long. Like, he's a little too mean, is all I can say. But he is manageable. But yeah, all in all, I gotta say, Daedalus is pretty iconic. Tempest. I'll put him above Ranger. He's a solid wave 3 boss, but I wish he had more difficulty scaling factors, like range. Now, I wouldn't make his range linear. I would make it like scale at half the rate. So if his base radius was like, if his base attack range was like 200 studs, I wouldn't make it 200x. I would make it 100 plus 100x. So that way it's not too little on Infant, but it's not too high on Masso. But he is a unique boss, and he's like Daedalus. He actually incorporates team play mechanics that try to make the players like, he introduces players to unique mechanics that make them think as a team. And I like that. His goal as a boss is cool, and you know, having a cool like electricity chain, it's very on theme of DvN. It's just cool in general. But you know, he is kind of, the fact that he only targets groups, like, I think he should try to shock players that he walks past, at least, even if he's not walking directly towards them. It's a little weird, and he can be a little bit of a pushover at times. It's weird, like, but then again, all of a sudden, he'll also just fry your asses out of nowhere, so. But yeah, I mean, it's not bad. I would change some things about him, though. Next is probably, what, Fusilier? Fusilier's not actually that bad of a wave 3 boss, but first of all, his range scales with difficulty. That's terrible. This means that on any difficulty below Shell Shock, you could just stay far away and he'll never hit you, but he'll still keep shooting at you. He's super annoying, and a lot of times doesn't even feel like a boss, and the grenade mechanic is cool, but it would only be good if he was actually stronger. I think Fusilier could be a really good boss, but I would probably instead I'd make his accuracy scale difficulty so he's more accurate on higher difficulties, and I would also make I would make his damage scale a bit. Not like I said, it would scale at half the rate, just like how I would make Tempest range scale. And I don't know. I tried to do something to spice him up a bit because overall he's not a very interesting boss, but he is. I mean, not too. I don't know. He's really just too much of a pushover at times. But for new players, you know. Also, if Screen Shake was mandatory, he'd be a lot more formidable. Which, personally, I think Screen Shake should be mandatory. I'm sorry. I play with it off. I get not liking it, but it would make sense because that I thought it was supposed to be a gameplay mechanic to make the game more challenging, but I don't know. All right, Gaia. God. Above Fusilier. Gaia was done dirty. So she was really OP back then, having the ability to summon enemies, and her attack range was really big. She was really strong. I get her nerf, but I feel like she's missing something. She's kind of boring. She's slow, and she's more of an ammo eater at times. And she doesn't match her theme at all. I feel like she could have a little bit of a nerf in terms of survivability, but a buff, as in the ability to summon in units again. So for every like escort that dies, she'll start summoning enemies in place of that unit. I don't know though. Gaia, it's not that her design is bad, it's that she's just not very fun per se. I don't know. Prometheus. Is he even after Gaia? I'm sorry. I'm going on to it anyways. I already explained it. I know Prometheus is... I would actually put him a lot higher. But Prometheus is actually a really balanced Wave 6 boss. He's really dangerous, but he's super exploitable. And I love his gas can mechanic. Because Prometheus is almost more of like a ticking... he's more like you have to survive. More so than you have to fight him. Because the idea is that if you blow up his gas cans, he becomes a lot more dangerous. And you have to, like, try to endure him. Because he has a lot of health, but you just wait for his health to drain. I don't know, it's just such a cool... He's a really fun boss, too. He's a boss that's super rewarding to kill with great satisfaction. I love... Like, dude, it's so fun to blow him up. And he can be absolutely terrifying at times, but he's also a reasonable boss. The only thing is sometimes I feel like sometimes he can be a little too weak in certain scenarios. He can be a little too strong. He could probably use some rebalance and tuning. But Prometheus is just a cool, fun, awesome boss. That's all I can say. Hermes. I'll put him above Daedalus. Hermes is a really cool, a really fun, unique boss. He's awesome. Issue though. Why in God's name is he on Wave 6? Hermes is a Wave 9 boss at the end of the day. Hermes is like, I swear when I go into Masso lobbies, he's like the #1 like boss when it comes to team wiping. He's too aggressive. And I already explained why he's so dangerous. And he really gives you no time to prepare. Like if he had a longer fly-in time, it would be so much better. Also, his flying mechanics are really weird, and I don't want to replay the clip of him just randomly teleporting to me. What? Hermes, in my opinion, should probably just stay at the middle of the map, like in any game. So that way you don't have to, like, you can like make special path thing for him so he doesn't just randomly teabag on maps. He's really annoying at times. And he's really strong. He's a fun boss. And he's like I know like some bosses like, oh, you fall asleep like Gaia and Fusilier. Hermes is fun. And there are really fun ways to kill him. He's a satisfying boss to fight, just like Prometheus. But he's just too strong for Wave 6. And at times, he can be annoying with how buggy and weird he works. Because he doesn't work the same as the other AIs. But all in all, he's solid. I can appreciate him. Yes! I don't need to say anything much further. I don't need to say it much further. Achilles, not only is he my favorite boss, but is my favorite unit. Is he flawless? Absolutely not, no. But he is really well made. I like the idea that as bosses progress, not only do they become harder as in you have to approach them. I don't want them to just be like, oh, I'm just harder. I want them to be harder as in they're unique. You have to approach them with unique mechanics. And, making them just objectively harder makes sense. I also like the idea that, like, oh, you also need better gear. Because, Wave 3, you don't want to put a boss that requires good gear to fight comfortably. Or at least reasonably. Like, Prometheus on Wave 3 is bad because it's like, well, I'm just going to get rushed. I don't really have any gear to do anything. Popping his tanks with a base combat rifle is bad unless I want to let him get close to me and then randomly dash and fry me, But by Wave 6, recons, they'll have their armor pillars. Assaults will have bolters. There's teleporters, jetpacks, you name it. But Achilles is a unit you would never find on those waves. He is the most formidable Wave 9 boss, and I think people recognize Achilles as the most brutal boss in the game. By average, most people hate Achilles the most. But what I really, really love about Achilles is that he has a clear weakness. Two of them, in fact. So he has a drone mechanic that makes him pretty difficult to fight. So that's where team play comes in handy. So you can have one guy that breaks his drone, the other people that shoot him. He can be taken out reasonably. He's cool and scary as shit. Randomly, beep, dead. Like, I love that. And the whole teleporter concept is cool because it gives him a weakness at least. So, because he's a sniper boss, he's supposed to be a threat from afar. So you can at least, if you get close to him, you can scare him off and make him teleport, which is really cool. And you can hack them. So if you're playing more mobily, like where you can't really shoot his drones, if you're on coastal or if you're playing scout, this really gives you a much better opportunity to kill him in a different way. But it's still challenging because he's a sniper. Like, you have to take cover and you have to try to advance in a way that doesn't get you shot. And you have to go from point A to point B. He's a boss that really discourages traveling, yet one of the ways to kill him involves traveling, making him really scary. But the biggest issue with him is his health formula used to be like backwards to where he'd only have 800 health. Now he's up to 1600 health, which is just way too much, in my opinion. His movement speed scaling with difficulty, I think, is kind of wild. It kind of makes sense, but it scales really hard, like aggressively. He can be buggy with his teleporters too. I also hate that, like, if you make him teleport, if you have line of sight with the same teleporter that he teleports to, he'll shoot you once he teleports, meaning you'll just die, which sucks. The telefragging is cool because it punishes players for just casually abusing his teleport by team killing. Overall, a very interesting boss, has a really banger, unique theme. I mean, a lot of banger themes like Daedalus, Gaia, Hermes. They got really cool themes, but Achilles has a very slow-paced theme, yet it's still intimidating because it's heavy. It makes up for it, and it just fits him so well. What can I say? I love Achilles. I am a recon main, so it might make sense, but even not being a recon main, he's just such a well-made boss. Trident! Trident. Oh, dude, Trident, you are such a cool concept, man. You were very cool. You were poorly made. I'm sorry. Trident is Achilles, but worse. Fight me. I know Trident, he can mangle. He has instant reaction speed. That's it. That's all he has going for him. The concept of an executioner boss is cool. Like, his theme is really sick. And, seeing him whirl around that big Ronin is scary. He's a scary looking boss. And him grappling players, and that's sick as can be. But, like I said, I don't even explain what I do to change him. Like I said, if he had mutilation, maybe not, because maybe that would be a little too far. But like I said, the riot shield mechanic, where you have to get grappled to break free. I also think that you should have like key press events instead of orbs, because most new players don't recognize the orbs, and the orbs are super buggy and just terrible. Not to mention if you're against the wall, it's like, well, okay, I'm just going to bleed to death here. Trident is a cool themed boss. He could be a really good Wave 9 boss, but he was just poorly, very, very, very poorly introduced. And Achilles does exactly what Trident does without all the work of having to make sure he actually lands his shot, pulls you in, and then hits you, in which you can break free. Achilles is just like, all right, pop, done, you're dead. Achilles wastes no time. Not to mention that Achilles is just objectively stronger. Like, his movement speed scales, which means, yes, on lower difficulties, Achilles can be a lot weaker than Trident, but on higher difficulties, Achilles is just king. Has a force field, has more health on higher difficulties, since Trident's health scaling sucks. Yeah. Next up, Sparta. Debatable. Okay, Sparta's a cool boss. He had a glow up too. Old Sparta had his blaster and really didn't do any meleeing until he got close. I'm sorry, garbage. But new Sparta he's sick as can be. He's super fun and energetic. And he's a melee boss that involves not constantly stunning you. So that can actually make him more fun to fight. And Sparta is such a thrill. He's a scary, intimidating boss with crazy killing power. The only reason he's only one reason he's not S tier. And that's because he's too exploitable with jetpacks. If it wasn't for that, if you fight him as intended, he's crazy. He is so fun, but he is so scary. But, yeah. Too exploitable. Last man standing. Mr. Ares. I'm sorry. I know Achilles is, like, probably my favorite boss. But if I had to speak from experience and from a little bit of an unbiased standpoint, Ares is the king. I would rate him lower due to accessibility, but I wish Hell Mode was more accessible to people. Ares is the final boss of DvN. He makes the game so much scarier, and he is such an intimidating powerhouse of a unit. The dude is a monster, and he really does bring that final boss fight. Dude, I'm sorry, hearing the name Ares is like, holy shit. Ares is, like, of all, like, types of bosses that you could put for DvN, of the DvN style, he is exactly what I'd, like, picture for a final boss. Don't get me wrong, Hermes is sick, Sparta's wild, Prometheus is a blast, Achilles is the absolute deadshot king, but Ares, I swear, is the staple and a core memory of this. I remember when we first beat Hell, was one of the greatest. I don't know, watching Ares, the last man, finally get defeated was, like, amazing. It was, I don't know. He's extremely overpowered, and it's completely valid. So yeah, awesome boss. And yeah, I spending a lot of time talking, but you know, final tier list. This is just more personal units that I ranked from ones that I like to ones I don't like. There's no, like, particular reason. These are just purely personal opinion. I'm a huge Achilles fan, but I also really love Prometheus and Hermes are fun, and Ares is pretty sick. Obviously, you could have guessed that the bosses are gonna get a bias. Notice that I actually put Trident not too low. I love Trident's theme. Both, when I say theme, I mean, like, what the theme of his character is, and I love his song. He's a very cool themed character, just despite the fact that he's poorly designed. And, you know, Gaia is the same case. Not very well designed, per se. She's not that bad, but she's definitely a cool theme of a boss. Grenadiers, infantry, snipers, they're alright. I mean, they're good. I like them. Everything below those are just, like, you know, I don't hate them, but I mean, I do kind of not like medics and tranquilizers, but I respect them. Every other thing's just kind of like whatever. Administrators, I know I put them in EU, Like I hate jetpackers and saboteurs. They actually just yeah, they suck. Administrators aren't actually like, I don't really hate them. There's just really nothing to like about them either. So I mean, they kind of probably more so belong in the meh category, but they're just kind of yeah. Sparta and Daedalus, very exciting. Tanks, obviously the armored units are all just really cool. But yeah, that's my tier list. That's gonna be all, and have a good day. If you got any questions, or if you want to argue with me, please do. I am not somebody who's like, oh, please be no, you can, dude, you can tell me how fucking wrong I am. I love arguments, by the way. They're fun to me. I like getting heated in them. Because at the end of the day, they're just pointless internet arguments. There's no real grudge, but please do argue with me. Please explain to me why, hey, you're wrong. Saboteurs are not nightmare fuel. But you want to know what really is nightmare fuel? The administrator. Like, I don't know. But if you have your own thoughts, or if you have your own tier list, feel free to send it to me. I love reading or seeing people's like opinions on this stuff. I like making tier lists and I like seeing them too. Or if you got any favorites, ones you hates, you know. I might do some more stuff like this in the future. But I want to upload some actual gameplay eventually because it's been kind of stale. I might upload one of my solo Hydra run attempts because it's funny. And I actually did manage to almost get past Wave 7 until like a random jetpacker sniped me. But yeah, I want to steer away from regular hell content as well because that's stuff that's kind of boring. It's purely for accomplishment and proof usually, but you know, if we beat City, I'm definitely going to upload that because that is a really huge deal. Like, it is extremely difficult. I mean, Archipelago is extremely difficult. People get the idea that it's not. When we spent like months trying to beat Archipelago, and it's the only reason it seems easy now is because, you know, we keep beating it, and teams that are there's only a couple teams who beat it outside of our team actually, and I've talked to a couple of them. They were like, yeah, dude, that was something. What was it? What was his face? He was talking about like, yeah, dude, no, my heart rate with Ares was insane. You were right. And I'm like, yeah, dude, Ares is, it's not like Epilogue where it's like, oh, I got stomped. GG for this wave. No, it's Ares is a menace. Yeah, actually, I would recommend like Hell mode to be a fun game mode if it wasn't for the first 10 waves. Actually, wave 10 is pretty fun, but the first so many waves are really a test of patience. They do kind of get boring after the first so many times, but Wave Ultima is always really fun. Yeah, I want to start doing more solo masochist runs as well. Like, I want to beat Recon City. Yeah. Okay, anyways. Bye. Fuck you. Yeah.